t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime. Tu m'as fait manquer, Bruxelles, je t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime. Tu m'as préféré, Bruxelles, je t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime.
Hello there and welcome to Brussels, My Love, our weekly European politics show. I'm Maeve McMahon, broadcasting this week from Strasbourg, where MEPs met for their first session since the summer recess. Thank you so much for tuning in. Coming up this week, it's the Commission President's favourite time of the year. On Wednesday, Ursula von der Leyen enjoyed over 1 hour in the spotlight here in Strasbourg, delivering her annual State of the European Union speech. From the trade deal with Trump to the ongoing wars in Ukraine and Gaza, MEPs were stirred with both what she said and what she left out. We take a closer look and hear what it means for her future and the EU's. And dressed in red, thousands of people took to the streets of Brussels last Sunday to call for EU member states to take a tougher stance against Israel. Since the Hamas attacks back on October 7th, 2023, the government of Benjamin Netanyahu has been hammering Gaza in a bid to annihilate Hamas. But 2 years on, even Israelis have had enough, and they're calling for their Prime Minister to stop the killing or endanger the lives of the hostages. So we're asking yet again why the EU is just a payer in this complex conflict and not a player. A warm welcome to our guests this weekend. German MEP Andrea Wexler from the Conservatives, the European People's Party. Welcome. Barry Andrews, Irish MEP from the Liberals Renew Europe. And Robert Biedron, Polish MEP from the Socialists. Lovely to have you all with us. Thank you. But before we bring in your views, let's just hear some snippets from the European Commission President's lengthy speech.
Just today we have seen a reckless and unprecedented violation of Poland and Europe's airspace. We need to work urgently on a new solution to finance Ukraine's war response and effort on the basis of the immobilized Russian assets. I believe Europe should have its own e-car. The future of cars and the cars of the future must be made here in Europe. Home has become a source of anxiety. This is more than a housing crisis. This is a social crisis. We will present the first ever European affordable housing plan. Algorithms that prey on children's vulnerabilities with the explicit purpose of creating addictions. Parents, not algorithms, should be raising our children. This must be Europe's independence moment. This is a fight for our future.
So the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, speaking on Wednesday here in Strasbourg. We tried to squash 1 hour there into just 1 minute, but was it a bold speech, Robert? What was your takeaway?
Well, I could see again that Ursula von der Leyen is ready to fight for Europe, but I want to ask when she will start fighting for Europe, because it was already quite a while since this commission was elected, and I really want this commission to start delivering. We are really living in a very difficult time. This week, Poland experienced this first after the Second World War massive attack of drones from the Russian Federation. There is massive austerity, there are housing issues, and of course you can make nice speeches as Ursula von der Leyen did, and I support almost everything she said, including this e-car where EPP was booing on her when she was doing that. But I need her to deliver.
So you support the words, but you feel that action is lacking. And
less words, more action.
And we're hearing a lot from sources in the Commission that the processes as well around the EU now, they're just not kind of fit for purpose. We can't keep up with the world today as it's going. What about you, Barry? Were you booing in the hemicycle or were you cheering?
No, I was impressed with the speech. I have to say it was very, very long. There were an awful lot of empty seats in the chamber when she started to speak, mostly on the right of the chamber. But I thought she struck the right balance, and I thought the overall framing of it was she was trying to rebuild the central coalition within the hemicycle with EPP, S&D and Renew. And she also recommitted to the Green Deal, eliciting a lot of boos from the right. So I think she recognises that the EPP flirting with the right and the far right has not worked. It has created an awful lot of backlash. And I felt it was a centrist speech. It was a speech that was directed at rebuilding that coalition in the centre of the Parliament.
Andrea, what are your thoughts? You're, of course, on her political group, the European People's Party.
Well, first of all, what we've seen is, and this response also to the mourning of the speech and the tragedies we've seen in Poland, which is an historical event that she struck the right tone because she seized the opportunity to call for unity in Europe, not only in Europe but also in the Parliament. And I think it was a very balanced speech that addresses the main concerns in Europe, which is security on the one hand side and a clear commitment by the Commission to secure security for its people, but on the other hand side also competitiveness. And what has already been mentioned as well, the things that are really dear to the people, which is employment opportunities, which is housing, which is affordable mobility. So I think that speech was very balanced in trying.
But what about unity? She mentioned the need for unity, and your party is not united behind her.
Well, we are united behind her. We were all there. We are supporting the politics. We have, and have a very different view from my Polish colleague and a Social Democratic colleague on this, and we are delivering. The last year has been a year of intense reflection on a new pathway, the clean industrial deal, on security, on the omnibuses, on deregulation, whilst continuing to deliver on the goals and objectives of the Green Deal. And I do think that we are delivering, and this is clearly why the EPP is still united behind her.
Well, the EPP might be united, but Ursula von der Leyen made a plea for unity, as you quite rightly said, in her speech. But the first thing that happened immediately after the speech is that Manfred Weber got up and attacked the other part of the coalition, the S&D.
And Manfred Weber, just for our viewers, is the head of the European People's Party, so the German politician. Yeah.
He attacked the S&D, the other side of that coalition, and then the head of the S&D, Irache, got up and she attacked him. So they called for unity within the Parliament.
So what signal is that sending to voters,
It was
to our
appalling.
viewers?
It was absolutely appalling, frankly, Maeve. And what should have happened is that should have been responded to. They were not listening to what Ursula von der Leyen had to say. And it actually took my group leader, Valerie Hare, to get up and to say, this is pathetic stuff. If we are serious about the serious threats that we have as a continent, as a union, then we have to start right here to rebuild the central coalition, the pro-European coalition. And what we saw on display immediately after Ursula von der Leyen's speech was really appalling.
It's what you'd expect from a kindergarten, perhaps. Was it pathetic in your view, Robert?
It was a pathetic situation because we are to rule within the coalition in this parliament. This is an agreement. EPP, Renew and Social Democrats made an agreement that we will deliver for people. And when one of the parties is playing the tricky games with extreme right, it all ruins because we are not busy on delivering the issues, the people's issues, like on housing, like on climate issues, like on austerity. Then people are frustrated and then they start to thinking this is a kindergarten. And who is happy with that? People are frustrated, but Putin, of course, opens the champagne because he sees us divided in the situation when we have a war in Ukraine, when there are drone attacks on Poland, where all this multilateral world is being dismantled. This is really not the time where we should afford ourselves to be splitted as democratic forces, as respecting human rights and rule of law, because those guys from the right wing, they may be populist, but we will never stand on the side of democracy, rule of law and human rights. And this lesson from today's debate should be learned, and from tomorrow we should be united like we agreed on this agreement of coalition.
Well, as EPP, we are absolutely committed to the Ursula von der Leyen majority and to the platform, which is, by the way, not a formal coalition. That's always also very important to say to the citizens. But what we are also committed to is what was promised in last year's Commission's work programme, which is deregulation, which is delivering for the people, and what we are constantly saying in the European Parliament, and that is the nitty-gritties that we're seeing. That is that in the committees, we see, like last week in the Ample, that the Social Democrats are not going along the way of simplification that we've agreed to go upon. So this is the nitty-gritties. But I think what this week shows us, what is at stake in Europe right now, is not only the nitty-gritties, but it's the unity of the continent, it's democracy, it's the rule of law. And I can clearly say that EPP is committed on these broad lines to lead and deliver on the security and competitiveness for the people.
But meanwhile, voters are turning away from mainstream parties. They're not putting their trust in mainstream parties because mainstream parties are not delivering, because as we can see here, they're squabbling together.
Well, I mean,
now, just back on this simplification point, Barry Andrews, will that make life easier for Irish businesses?
There's an awful lot in the omnibuses, which are the collective legislation that has been brought forward by the Commission, that is very positive. However, there is quite a lot of examples where simplification has gone beyond just trying to debureaucratize the legislation. In some cases, that it's actual deregulation. So, for example, the due diligence directive that I worked on in the last mandate, that has been absolutely gutted.
Taken apart.
And this is supposed to ensure that we have clean supply chains so that consumers who are out and about shopping on a Saturday afternoon can be assured that they're not contributing to human rights abuses, that they're not contributing to environmental damage, that they're not contributing to labour infractions. And the EPP, I'm sorry to say, a lot of it is simplification, but some of it is deregulation, and we have to own up to that situation.
And businesses were getting ready for that. They were preparing because they were
right.
getting those signals. So definitely very confusing times.
I think the good thing from this week's debate on the State of the Union is that we have a vision. We have a statement on the things the President, Ursula von der Leyen, wants to deliver, and we should keep her accountable and support her on these issues, because those are the issues where we, in great majority, we agree, and we are able to push it forward, because we still have majority. Even though there are some tricky games in this House, we are able to deliver to people on housing, on climate, on austerity, on education, on defense, which is very important issue, on the next budget, which is very important for people. They really want to, and they are asking already us, what this budget will be. Will it be for people, or will it be for elites? And
well, you mentioned something that people do care about, and that is housing. And we did see Ursula von der Leyen this week say that we have a social crisis in Europe, the housing crisis, and she's planning to do a lot to address this issue. Will she be able to fix this problem?
Well, first of all, I think what was very important in relation to housing is that this really addresses the core concerns of people all over Europe. And this is a very good sign, because what this speech was not meant to be is a speech towards the groups in Parliament, but what this speech was also meant to do is to address the real issues of the people, and that's what it did, by also addressing housing. However, and we need to be very careful, housing is not the core competence of the European Union. So we need to be very careful in what we promise to the people and what the European Union can actually deliver upon. But I trust that the Commission will be very responsible, and she has full support of EPP and also the Parliament, that we will tackle this issue for the benefit of the people.
So could we see clashes here with governments as she starts to go after short-term rentals, for example?
No, I think it'll be quite the opposite. I think, you and I are Irish. We think the housing problem is only in Ireland, it's only in Dublin, but it's all the way through the 27 member states. And she rightly framed it in terms of not just competitiveness, that we have housing available for workers, etc., but also in social coherence, social cohesion, I should say. And so I think that was really sensible. And there are things that Europe can do. You're absolutely right. Of course, it's a national competence, but there are things that Europe can do, and they can really help member states, particularly in the area of state aid, which she really focused on. I launched the European Housing Association's manifesto before the last election with a whole range of things in terms of funding, in terms of research, in terms of state aid, that the European Union can do to help member states in this area.
Well, on this, we as socialists, we were fighting for long that the housing will be a priority in this House and in this Commission, and I'm very happy that we have also a committee dedicated to housing. We have
and there was plans she mentioned as well to eradicate poverty. Do you trust in those plans?
Yes, that's very important on poverty, but on housing, 30 million people in European Union cannot afford for affordable housing. This is a serious issue. It's like more than whole Belgium would not be able to have affordable housing. So this is a serious issue, and I agree with my colleagues in every single country. So besides the statements, there must be money following this and a real plan to deliver on housing, because this is a Polish problem, German problem, Irish problem, and all the 27 problem.
Another pan-European problem, if you like, is the social media addiction we're seeing among our young people. She spoke about that topic as well in the speech this week, saying that parents should bring their children up and not algorithms. What about this idea of a ban on social media for the under-16s?
Well, I think she said she's going to set up a special panel that's going to report by November, very quickly, as to whether the Australian example to ban social media for the under-16s would work across the European Union. So I think this is brilliant. And I think, I've got kids at that age, and we're really trying to find the right balance, and parents need help.
The kids would hate it. I mean, come on, teenagers don't want to be banned from social media.
Don't tell them.
I think parents need help, and I think there are various things the European Union has done over the years, small things that have made big differences to people's lives. And I think if we went down into this area, into social media, and try to protect our young people, they can still have WhatsApp, they can still keep in touch with their friends, they can still have a mobile phone to play music, but
Andrea,
they won't be exposed to these algorithms.
I absolutely agree. I think when we look in the larger lines of democracy, about false information, about the influence on our children, and that's our future, we need to be very careful. And the approach that the Commission is taking by taking this on a factual analysis, trying to get experts on, and then to hopefully act very courageously on this is going to protect our young people, and I can only support
And when she made this comment in the hemicycle, I noticed that most of the MEPs were looking at their phones.
Checking if we are already banned. And
so
maybe she could ban phones from the hemicycle too.
Yes, but on this, I think what is important, we need to protect children, and everything what is forbidden offline should be banned online. This should be the rule. I don't understand why we are allowing children to be exposed to this violent, drastic content on social media, while offline, in real life, we are not allowing people to do that. But online, you find everything. You cannot imagine, probably, what children are exposed to. So I fully agree on that. But again, we need to see the results on that, because
there are
lots of words and little action on that.
Well, look, back in Brussels as well, EU watchers have been carefully following this State of the European Union speech, because it sets the policy agenda for the coming months and gauges the political appetite. For another view, we had a chat with Rebecca Christie. She's a senior fellow at the think tank Bruegel. Take a listen.
She is really in a tough spot right now because the Commission is under a lot of criticism for not being ambitious enough, not working hard enough to lead through the moment, at the same time as it faces criticism for not being democratic enough and not listening to what voters want, and not being responsible to the member states who have a lot of control over the agenda. From the member states, which I think is her most important constituency, there hasn't been a lot of encouragement to be bold, to lead, to take strong action. If you look at the leaders in Germany and France in particular, they have very large domestic worries. So there's not a lot of momentum behind her to take action with the backing of the member states. That said, if she doesn't take some sort of step forward, she's going to face even more criticism for paralysis and for failing to step up. The State of the Union speech is a chance to put herself on show before the lawmakers, to give the European Parliament a chance to feel heard, to voice their frustration.
So that was Rebecca Christie there, because Ursula von der Leyen was coming into this speech quite weak. Did she come out of it that little bit stronger, perhaps, Andrea, do you think?
Well, what we can definitely see is that Europe is getting stronger also with the changes in the governments that we are seeing. So the alignment with Germany and the German Chancellor has certainly also supported her position in Europe. And yes, I think she can go out of the speech rather strong. She now has to deliver, and she must manage to reunite the platform in the European Parliament. I think it was a clear call on us to do that, and I think we can clearly say that this was a moment to go forward into the fall, and it's going to be a fall of deliveries.
Did you vent your frustration?
No, but I was very impressed with the speech. I thought the way it was constructed was very good. This story about
But to turn words into action, Barry, she needs member states on board. And we have France, for example, this week, a country that's been grinded to a halt, with Wednesday being the block everything day.
Yeah, well, look, that's the nature of the European Union. You know, we always look at these crises that we've had, with it, whether it was Brexit, whether it was migration, whether it was COVID, and the Union has always actually got stronger, even through the austerity. So we're going through a very difficult period. What was very noticeable.
Because now we face irrelevance, right? The EU faces irrelevance.
I don't think so. I think I was impressed with it, with her reasserting her leadership, her central leadership in the European Union. It is now down to the member states to agree on so many different things. So you're absolutely right. That's the frustration. And I have to say again, I just thought Manfred Weber really didn't read the room when he made his opening remarks after the President's speech today.
Back to her plans for the future.
I agree. Ursula von der Leyen is very good doing the show, and she did really very good show. And as
what about her plans on defence? Her plan for a drone alliance with Ukraine?
Excellent. But the most important is, besides doing the show, what she will do after she goes out from the stage. when there will not be a spotlight, and she will sit with Fico, with Orban, with the new Prime Minister of France, and how she will be able to talk to them to persuade to these issues. And this is more difficult than addressing us, where we, in great majority, we are united on these issues. We are on the same line with Ursula von der Leyen. This will be the difficulty.
I thought it was very interesting. On defence, I mean, look, we're a neutral country. People understand that. They respect our constitutional position.
Ireland's not in NATO.
We're not in
Hardly
NATO.
spends a penny on
but hang a second.
defence.
We have been in the lead in supporting financially Ukraine. We've supported accession for Ukraine. We've supported the Temporary Protection Directive in an extreme way, and humanitarian support for Ukraine. So it is true. But we are also one of the highest net contributors to the European Union budget. So when you take all of that in the whole, and you respect our constitutional right to be neutral, like 3 other European countries are, I think that's fair. But I think what was very striking about the speech was she never mentioned Donald Trump throughout her speech, which would have aggravated him very, very much. I think she was slightly trolling him a little bit. She was talking about getting some tech leaders from Europe in and making a declaration. It sounded like she was...
Maybe because she did not deliver well on tax.
I mean,
Just final thoughts with Andrea just on cars. She spoke about the future of the European cars, small electric cars. Did she settle the worries of the car industry with her comments?
Certainly not. Like, that's one of the criticisms and points of criticism we definitely have. You know, we went into the election campaign clearly saying that one of our objectives is the stop of the combustion engine ban. That she has not clearly delivered upon. We have, again, the automotive summit, and we will see what this is going to bring. But
we will indeed. We'll keep an eye on that, Andrea.
Certainly.
But on that point, we can bring this conversation to an end. Stay with us, though, here on Euronews, because shortly we will be back to hear why the EU just cannot speak with one voice on the Hamas-Israel war. See you soon. Welcome back to Brussels, my love, our weekly European politics show here on Euronews, coming to you this weekend from Strasbourg. Well, this week, among other topics, MEPs discussed and voted on a resolution on the ongoing war in Gaza that began after the October 7th Hamas terrorist attacks against Israel. Now, the Commission President, for the first time ever, took a rather hard line against Israel, calling for sanctions on extremist Israeli ministers and violent settlers. She said she would put bilateral support to Israel on hold and stop payments to Israel without affecting, of course, the ongoing work with Israeli civil society. She also calls for a partial suspension of the EU-Israel Association Agreement, which, of course, regulates trade. So it's quite a change of tone, really, from the Commission President here. How do you feel, Barry Andrews, about her intervention?
It was a massive change in tone. I mean, it was more than I expected. She made reference to a man-made famine. That's a controversial thing, and it will have really hurt the the Israeli government, I should say, to hear that language coming from Ursula von der Leyen, including all the points that you said. So it was a massive change.
The tone she struck was more the tone she uses when she's alluding to the Ukraine-Russia war.
Yeah.
Did she upset a lot of people, though, in her own party with those comments?
There's certainly not a unified position on this, and we're still in debate in Europe on how we react to the Gaza dramatics that we're seeing. And certainly there are countries and there are people like us in Germany that are very cautious about our reactions to this very clear change in lines, with our history and our clear commitment to Israel, but our clear commitment to human rights as well. This is certainly a massive change, as has already been said in the communication. And there are certainly points that we do not support.
OK. What about you? Did your party dress in red this morning in protest outside the hemicycle this week?
Yes, because we are dealing with unimaginable tragedy and I think culturally right genocide. I cannot imagine that we can not take more action on the situation where almost 70,000 people were killed. I was a mayor once, and my city was more or less this amount of people. And if it's out of my mind to imagine that all these people would be killed. And this is the situation in Gaza today. And I welcome the words of Ursula von der Leyen because they were very much awaited.
And European citizens were expecting that from her. I mean, you've probably seen the protests on the streets all across Europe and, in fact, in Israel itself.
There is protests and there is expectations that Europe acts and does act. But again, I would like to remind of the fact that Hamas could end this war. any moment in time. He could release the hostages. There is also still European hostages.
But that's not the reason to kill people. That's not the reason. This is really not the reason.
You
know, I come from Poland, and I could also use these historical issues and so on. We really, in this moment where people are being killed only because they live in this territory, this is really nothing. Nothing justifies this strategy and this situation.
Yeah, I mean,
think we should
even Qatar, what got dragged into it this week, we saw.
Yeah, I mean, Israel has bombed 6 of its neighbours over the last 2 years. 83% of the casualties in Gaza are civilians. You know, I made the point yesterday during the week in the speech that Israel used to agonise about harming civilians, particularly children. And now we have 50,000 children killed or injured, at least in Gaza over the last 2 years. So finally...
And should EU countries be welcoming children from Gaza? We don't see a lot of...
Interestingly, that is a process that's going on. It depends on Israel releasing children from Gaza into either Jordan or Egypt, and it also depends on European countries accepting. Now, mostly that's children who are requiring treatment for cancer, and their carers that come, and Ireland has done it, Greece has done it, Romania, Italy have taken in Gazan children. But I just want to make the point about the speech. I think it is a really big change. It sends a very clear message to Israel. You know, Israel really care about their reputation internationally. They care about their reputation in Europe, but they especially care about their reputation in Germany. And together with what Merz had to say about export controls, now von der Leyen's speech, I think it really makes Israelis sit up straight, and I think it's well beyond time
and I think
that it should have been done.
They also care about trade with Europe. We must remember that EU is the largest trading partner of Israel. It's 30% last year. So if we implement the issues which was mentioned by the Commission's president, it will really hit Israel much. So they really should reconsider if they want to continue this situation, because it brings harm to everyone and not solution to anyone.
And that's why EU member states are so divided on the topic due to this trade relationship and, of course, close relationship that Ursula von der Leyen herself, in her speech, also alluded to the close relationship she has with Israel, but she said she cannot look either at the horrific killings.
Clearly, and what we should be worrying about is of course, the trade relationships on the one hand side, but clearly what it is about the humanitarian crisis and the question of proportionality of the action Israel has taken.
But
at the same time, we should never forget that a ceasefire and a stop by Hamas could solve this issue on a short-term notice, and the release of the hostages could as well. And this is a clear demand, and this has just been a very small demand in that speech.
And are you giving a guarantee that Netanyahu will start this action when this happens? We never had these promises. And you know that the radicalism of today's Israeli government goes beyond these expectations. Who is giving the guarantee that this will stop if there will be release? Of course, we are all calling for this release. This is also a terrible tragedy, what happened, what Hamas did. This is a terrible organization which should be banned for and not supported by anyone.
Organization. It's a terrorist organization.
It is.
And where is the guarantee to tell us that
where are Europeans as well around the
excuse.
table? The Europeans are not there.
But Netanyahu facilitated the growth of Hamas in order to divide the Palestinian people. The New York Times was able to disclose before October the 7th, obviously, that the Netanyahu government were very happy to see funding to go from Qatar into Hamas because it divides the Palestinian people and it makes a Palestinian state much less likely. That's what happened. So it's fine and correct to say that Hamas is a terrorist organization. That's all correct. And we want a future without Hamas. But let's not try and justify what's been going on for the last 2 years. And the question has to be asked, why did it take Ursula von der Leyen 2 years to finally conclude what the vast social majority in Europe had concluded an awful long time ago? And it may be to do with the framing of what's happening in this parliament.
The background to this is the largest Holocaust this world has ever seen since World War II. And the victim, the original victim, is certainly Israel. And that's why it has taken her 2 years.
OK, well, on that conclusion, we can bring this conversation to an end. For more on that story, please do visit our website, euronews.com. Thank you so much to our panel, Barry Andrews, Robert Biedron and Andrea Vexler for being our guests. And thank you so much for tuning in. See you soon on Euronews. Hello Hello there and welcome to Brussels, my love, our European politics show here on Euronews. I'm Maeve McMahon and I'm in Strasbourg for this edition, sitting down with the MEPs Barry Andrews from Ireland, from Renew Europe, Robert Biedron from Poland, from the Socialists, and Andrea Wexler from Germany, from the European People's Party. Well, this week, a big focus of the plenary was on how to stop the war in Ukraine and the ongoing hybrid threats from Russia. Maya Sandu, that's the president of Moldova, was here calling on MEPs to open their eyes to the reality. She said EU accession was a, quote, matter of survival for her country and that there's a lot at stake in the upcoming parliamentary elections taking place at the end of the month.
Its outcome will decide whether we consolidate as a stable democracy on the path to EU membership, a safe neighbour to Ukraine and a security provider to the Union, or whether Russia destabilizes us, pulls us away from Europe and turns us into a threat. The Kremlin's goal is clear: to capture Moldova through the ballot box, to use it against Ukraine, and to turn us into a launchpad for hybrid attacks in the European Union. Moldova may be the testing ground, but Europe is the target.
Maya Sandu there, that's the president of Moldova speaking here in Strasbourg earlier in the week. Robert Biedron, did you watch her speech? Are you concerned about Moldova? Are your voters, are they worried about the situation there?
Very much concerned, because this reminds me where Poland was negotiating entrance to EU, and we had same concerns, whether we will be part of this democratic world of European Union or we will be in the sphere of influence of Russia. And I really closely watch the situation in Moldova in the context where we see so much disinformation, cyber attacks and attacks on the president.
And her speech is worth a watch because she alluded to all those sinister attacks. But really her speech was a pitch for EU membership. Of course, Moldova applied for membership right after the invasion, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Would you like to see Moldova join, and by when?
Absolutely. I mean, this is not in my hands and in my wish list, but when this is going to happen. But Moldova is doing a wonderful job, and Maya Sandu is a great president working the country towards the European Union. We are supporting Moldova in many ways so that they have a growth plan, etc., to really speed up the accession to the European Union. Of course, you know, the criteria must be fulfilled. That's important also towards our European citizens, but we want Moldova to be part of the European family. They're part of our values, and that's a country that belongs to Europe.
Barry, what's your view on that? And we did hear Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, in her speech alluding to more reunification or enlargement. She wants to see it happen in the next couple of years. What are your views?
Yeah, I mean, Moldova is in a very difficult geographic location, and you know we all know that Russia expands by invasion and infiltration, whereas the European Union expands by invitation. And Moldova has expressed through referendums and presidential elections, and hopefully in the general election that will happen at the end of this month, its desire for a European future. And I think we in the European Union have become a little bit, you know, accession fatigue because of what's happened with Hungary, with other member states. And when Ireland joined in 1973, we were a very poor country. There was a terrible conflict going on the island of Ireland at that time. But Ireland and Britain came into the European Union, and it has been a miraculous transformation for Ireland in particular. Obviously, UK took a slightly different path. So I think we would be able to show the pathway to accession for countries like Moldova, divided as, you know, and infiltrated as it is, that the European path is the only true path for Moldovans in the future.
Andrea, these elections that are upcoming, what's at stake in these elections? And we did see the German Chancellor Merz, he was there a few weeks ago, accompanied by Emmanuel Macron and your head of state, Donald Tusk, as well.
Well, at stake is for Moldova, first of all, whether it will be under Russian influence, with the majority going against the European Union, or whether it will continue its pathway to Europe. But there's more at stake for the European Union, because this is a very central country for the security of Europe, defending our values, and I do think that this is really worthwhile supporting, and this is very crucial, because as Maya Sandu has set out, this is a ground to attack Europe, and this is really serious for the entire continent.
But is there anything that Brussels can do, the institutions here, to counter this disinformation and all this interference in the elections that will take place at the end of the month and therefore determine the future of the country?
Of course we can do, and I think Ursula von der Leyen has gave an example and one of the ideas this week on this so-called drone wall, which we were calling for a long time to strengthen our eastern border resilience. And this week's example from Poland with this drone attack from Russian Federation is one of the examples what may happen. And that's why we should really rethink our financial contribution to security. Poland is a great donator on that, and we are on the lead, but other countries are staying behind. They think maybe this will happen in Ukraine, maybe Poland will be attacked with drones, but appetite of Putin is larger than this. He will not stop in Donetsk or Odessa. He will really continue his attacks, annexation, not only in Moldova, but other countries. So we should stay united also on that. And when we discuss the next engagements, financial engagements, we should really have in mind that what is on stake is our own security, not Polish, not Moldavian, not Ukrainian, by European security.
And do you think in Ireland people have those similar concerns? It's rather far away.
Yeah, look, I mean, clearly Andrea and Robert have a much better insight. And I think the further west you go, you have a more diminished sense of the reality of what life must be like for Moldova to be exposed to so much disinformation. So I think Europe has to do whatever it can to help Moldova on that pathway. You know, I'm the chair of the Democracy and Elections Group with David McAllister here in the European Parliament, and we will be sending an observation team to the elections that are taking place on September the 28th, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that those elections can take place in a free, fair and transparent way. So these are things that we can do to try and help those Moldovans who are not to be influenced by their Russian neighbour.
I think we also have to understand as Europeans, as you've said, this doesn't stop in Moldova. So we need to really be on guard in Europe and how we can stop disinformation campaigns, influence operations from Russia, hybrid warfare. And this is a wake-up call for Europe to defend itself. It's democracy on the one hand side, and on the other hand side, to become so attractive for enlargement candidates that they stick on a European pathway.
Well, on that point, we can bring this conversation to an end. Thank you so much to our MEPs, our guests, Andrea Wexler, Barry Andrews and Robert Biedron for being with us. And thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to make a comment on any topic that we've been discussing here on Brussels My Love, do reach out. Our email address is brusselsmylove@euronews.com. You can also reach out to us on social media and we will get back to you. Thanks again for watching. See you soon. Take care.